This workshop to order. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. Thank you all for coming out. You can see this is quite the. This is one of the largest crowds we've had. We've received some of the most emails we've had. It's great to see so many citizens getting involved in their community. The order, and we have, and unfortunately, we had a last-minute change to our order. The order as it is right now is that we're going to have a presentation from the Airport Committee. Then we'll have a presentation from the Ochlockonee Bay Alliance. We had planned to have DOT, but they are in an emergency and not able to show up today. So we may have a brief synopsis from our county administrator who has met with DOT. And then we will have discussion from our board amongst ourselves. We will also allow time, depending on time, for citizen input. Right now we have over 45 cards filed. 40 cards filed. So at this point, we're looking at providing about 90 seconds for citizens to speak. If it continues to get many more cards, we will probably reduce it down to a minute. When you do have the chance to speak, I would encourage you to be brief. We will be enforcing it very strictly. If someone has already said what you would like to say, feel free to come up and say, I agree with X, or I disagree with X. But you don't have to elaborate. We have a general idea. Again, I have received more. This is probably in the top 3 things I've received emails on in the last 4 years. So I appreciate all of y'all's input. With that being said, are there any other comments from the board before we hear from the Airport Committee? All right. If the Airport Committee would begin their presentation. Is this their packet? And we'll Sir?
Well, my name is John Russell. I'm the chairman of the Airport Committee. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to attend our meeting today. Just want to give a basic overview of our airport, Wakulla County Airport. It's approximately 15 acres. The runway is 1836. It's currently 2,590 feet by 70 feet and 200 feet wide. The airport is comparatively narrow. Excuse me. And the existing property does not allow the airport to meet the Florida Department of Transportation minimum licensing standards for the requirements for primary surface of 125 feet each side of the center line. As of 2003, the grandfathering of airport stopped, meaning that this airport is no longer in compliance and must meet current FDOT standards. With that said, the FDOT granted a special license in 2003 and has been operating with this special license since. In June 2006, a workshop with the BOCC was held, and these deficiencies were given to the BOCC. Subsequently, with a resolution by the county to support operations and maintenance of the airport, FDOT provided a 100% no-match grant of $78,000 for an airport update layout plan, including identifying airport improvements. The result was presented by myself and Mr. Robert Ory of Planning Tech, Inc., and was accepted by the BOCC. Since then, there has been no implementation of any improvement projects identified in the current ALP that was approved by FDOT. These improvements would have been fully funded by FDOT with no financial burden to the county. This year, the BOCC selected an airport committee to complete the task of managing and developing the airport. At the very first meeting, the committee was met with opposition to the airport improvements by residents, specifically the land acquisition portion of Surf Road directly off the departure end of 1-8. The committee has held several meetings and agreed that mediation in the form of removing these acquisitions from the current ALP listed would satisfy these residents. The ALP has been updated to reflect this change. Wakulla County Airport has continued to be an asset to the county without any expenditures in county taxes. The airport was donated to the county, and FDOT has committed to funding the necessary improvement projects without any financial burden to the county. The airport is an asset in the way that subsequently fostered a small 100-lot flying community called Tarpine. These residents took over maintaining the airport, provided tractors to mow, installed lighting, irrigation, filled dirt, seating, all at their own expense. They even paid the monthly electric bill without requiring any compensation from the county. Nearly all the all Tarpine residents moved here because of the airport. Interestingly enough, out of the 22 homes or so in Tarpine, 12 of them are relatives of each other. Of those, 5 homes are parents of residents and others are siblings and other relatives. Just as many residents of Wakulla County moved here because of their shoreline and nature, Tarpine residents moved here solely because of our airport. Tarpine is a community within a community providing a vessel for property taxes and sale tax, just like everyone else in Wakulla County. The difference here is Tarpine residents went above and beyond the typical county residents by financially and physically taking care of a county asset, the airport. The airport is also an asset to the county in the form of potential revenue. Our airport has the potential to make, from the projected 30 hangars in the LP, $300 a month, a total of $9,000 a month. From 25 tie-downs at $25 a month each, a total of $625 a month. And the fuel, depending on sales, $3,000 to $6,000 annually. That's approximately $121,000 a year just from what is outlined in the ALP. A detailed development plan should be undertaken with FDOT monies to more accurately identify forecast development costs and project revenues which can be completed by the county's current consultant, Kinley Horn. The other form of an asset is in jobs, which can total somewhere between 2 and 6. The jobs come in the form of airport management, aircraft maintenance facilities. These jobs typically starting pay from $35,000 to $65,000 a year. Another seemingly hidden form of value back to the community is in the disbursement of FDOT grants to county businesses that will help in developing the airport. Additionally, county staff are eligible for a percentage of each grant and project that they administer. With the current grants in JSIP, that's potentially $250,000 of funds available for county staff. In summary, the airport is an asset to the county that will be self-sustaining with FDOT grants and most likely would generate revenue to the county. We'll provide the opportunity for county businesses to help develop projects, and the county has full DOT support by both technically and financially. Excuse me. As far as our ALP is outlined, we were approved by former commissioners. Unfortunately, I don't think I've ever met each of you at any time before, except maybe Alan. Came down to visit the airport one day. I'd like to point out that this is not an expansion, it's an improvement to our current airport. The current airport is only 200 feet wide. It needs to be 125 feet wide to meet DOT standards. In order to do that, we need to purchase some property, and we have the resources and the funding available. All we need is the county support to move ahead with our improvements. If there's any questions anybody would like to ask regarding the ALP, Mr. Ori is here to provide assistance. Although he cannot answer for DOT, he has a very good relationship with DOT and actually wrote the current JSIP program for DOT. At this time, are there any questions?
I may have questions later, but I wanted to see what their presentation was.
Okay. You have additional aspects to your presentation?
I'm sorry?
Are you done?
Yes.
Okay.
We can provide slides showing the ALP and the current airport. Let's see.
While Katie's getting set up here, I'll try to be brief. I've prepared a presentation to try to give an overview from the airport manager's perspective. I am your volunteer airport manager, and I would like to say I very much appreciate the opportunity to serve Wakulla County in that capacity. I also very much appreciate all of the people that showed up today, because I truly believe that citizen input is the hallmark to a great government. And I thank everybody, both proponents and opponents, for coming here. So, and I also appreciate very much the commission giving us the opportunity to have this discussion publicly. I'm going to turn around this way so I can read what y'all are seeing. This workshop was requested by the Airport Committee of Wakulla County to discuss whether or not the update to the airport master plan should be done. I put together some desired outcomes. First would be prevent closing of the Wakulla County Public Use Airport. It's identified worldwide as 2 Juliet 0. Significantly enhance safety for both aviators and neighbors is what this is all about. Increasing economic impact both locally and regionally is a byproduct of doing these improvements. We can develop airport infrastructure that generates surplus budgets. We'll absolutely implement best neighbor practices, including environmental best neighbor practices, green and sustainable. We appreciate the capability and commitment of our partners to date. We'd certainly like to continue the current BOCC policy of supporting airport improvements. We'd also like to address immediate requirements for corrective safety action. And lastly, we'd like to help the BOCC formulate a tentative agreement for ratification at a future board meeting. It's very clear that without improvements to the airport, it will lose its public license. The airport property would then revert to the heirs of Fenton Jones. Wakulla then loses vital aviation-related public safety functions. Some of those include the medevac flights, emergency response, law enforcement, aerial firefighting. It can be used as a diversionary airport, and of course disaster relief. And in light of what occurred in Dennis and Tropical Storm Debby, I think that's very important. That part of the county can very easily get cut off. Medical evacuations are common at the Wakulla County Airport. The next closest landing zone is Wakulla High School, about 20 to 25 minutes away. That can mean the difference between life and death in a medical emergency. Here's some training with Air Methods. They are a contracted medevac supplier for Wakulla County and Wakulla County Fire Rescue, doing training at the Wakulla County Airport. This happens to be a flight of 3 Black Hawk helicopters. The military occasionally comes in and does night operations and also day operations, and they do training at our airport. So our national security is part of what our airport provides. We had joint agency fire suppression and prescribed burning training at the Wakulla County Airport. These, by the way, are pictures of actual on-airport activities at Wakulla County. During times of hurricane and floods, Ocklackney Bay residents can easily become cut off and isolated from the rest of Wakulla County. A real possibility exists that in times of emergency or natural disaster, residents could be endangered and need to be airlifted or resupplied via aircraft using Wakulla County Airport. During Dennis, we were isolated, could not get on or off that part of the county unless, it's a good thing it didn't last longer than what it did, or the water didn't come up any higher than what it did. The airport has some of the highest ground in the area. Improvements would raise it even higher than it currently is. Like I mentioned, safety, safety, safety. A hard surface runway decreases takeoff distance for aircraft. Hard surface runway increases our braking action, which allows us to stop quicker. And we all know that we've had overrun incidents at Wakulla County. Departing aircraft will actually fly higher over neighbors' homes when using a hard surface runway. Arriving aircraft will actually fly higher over neighbors with an improved runway due to the new displaced thresholds. The area surrounding an improved runway will be cleared of obstacles. Visual approach path indicators will greatly reduce overruns and inadvertent low approaches. Any shorter runway than what we currently have would mean less safety for both neighbors and pilots. The economic impact. According to an FDOT study in 2010, the Wakulla County Airport contributed $113,900 to the local economy. Of 102 general aviation airports in Florida, these are GA airports now, small airports, not commercial, Wakulla County ranked 99th. Unfortunately, that places us third from the bottom. Airport improvements will clearly advance Wakulla's ranking while benefiting both local and regional economies. Improvements directly benefit local restaurants, seafood houses, charter fishing, ecotourism, motels, rental properties, festivals, etc., etc. This was the study. You can see Wakulla County at $113,900. There we go. I'll push that one. Look at some of these other numbers. They're just astounding, the kinds of dollars that are brought into the economy by general aviation airports. It's phenomenal. These are the only two that performed lower than Wakulla County, DeLand and High Springs. I'll be handing out this information after the presentation. Airport activities that improve our economy and create jobs. Some of those are tourism, access to special events, some intermodal connections, and special aeronautical air shows, skydiving, fly-ins, flying the Boy Scouts, the Eagles program. Other aviation-specific functions are self-piloted business flights, which we have many, flight instruction, personal flying, charter services, aircraft manufacturing maintenance, aircraft storage, aerospace engineering and research. Airport improvements also create construction jobs. Airport improvements facilitate aviation-related businesses such as flight training, aerial tours, maintenance and repair, etc., which also create more jobs. Airport improvements are funded 100% with no match grants. These grants typically provide a 10% administration fee for Wakulla County. These grants are for airport improvements and will simply be allocated to another county if Wakulla County Airport is closed or if the BOCC elects to do the bare minimum. I'll call the Band-Aid approach. Profitable infrastructure. Well-managed general aviation airports have budget surpluses. Revenue is generated via grants, hangar rent, tie-down fees, land leases, landing fees, access fees, fuel flowage fees, etc., etc. This happens to be just an excerpt from Quincy Gaston Airport, which is an airport that was in Wakulla County's position back in the mid-'80s. They currently, this fiscal year, have a revenue generation of over $2 million. They also have a $31,000 or $32,000 contingency, in other words, a surplus. Recurring revenue from Wakulla County has already started with a land lease for a lightning detector. This happens to be a check recently received by the county. Not too bad for a little 2x2 piece of property. 2 feet by 2 feet. Many pilots will just simply not land on an unimproved runway grass strip. Many insurance companies will not insure aircraft landing on unimproved runways. Many pilots prefer not landing at airports without fuel being available. In order to be profitable, most, if not all, of the improvements are necessary. Simply doing the bare minimum will cost the taxpayers of Wakulla County. Being good neighbors, we certainly want to be good neighbors. One of the major concerns I've heard is that we want to absolutely assure everybody that no property whatsoever will be acquired without the voluntary consent and full approval of that property owner. With the updated ALP, none of those properties south of Surf Road have been identified as potential purchases. Again, potential purchase means voluntary. It does not mean eminent domain or inverse condemnation or anything that would not be of voluntary nature. This is a long-term process that FDOT is committed to. We understand that. It might be 10, 15, 20 years before it happens. Implement formal noise abatement procedures as practical. Many of the local pilots currently observe noise abatement procedures voluntarily. We can find out what could be required to mandate those and list those in the airport facility directory. Add buffers and beautification features as feasible. This is something that the engineers can move on and planning technologies can look at to do what can be done and still meet regulations. There's also reconsideration of runway realignment to eliminate certain properties from the potential to voluntary acquisition that are north of Surf Road. I think that's a real possibility. Clearly follow all environmental rules, regulations, and procedures. Utilize sustainable and green technologies whenever possible. We're looking at solar lighting, we're looking at any number of options that will make this airport as green and sustainable as possible. A little bit about our partners to date. We've had an unparalleled understanding and cooperation by the Florida Department of Transportation. They have been patient is an understatement, and they've been very, very generous, and they've worked hard. Technically superb aviation-specific expertise is in planning technologies. They developed the airport layout plan. We have world-class design consulting in Kinley Horn and Associates. It's important to note that there's been significant pro bono services provided to date by all of the above. The future vision of Wakulla County Airport has a rock-solid foundation, designed and supported by experts in the field. No better team exists to improve Wakulla County's infrastructure. I'd just like to thank you all for the hard work. Stay the course. The airport master plan has already been accepted by the Wakulla County BOCC. It's approximately a 200-page document. Grant assurances have already been accepted by the Wakulla County BOCC. Grants with assurances have already been accepted by the Wakulla County BOCC. The airport layout plan has already been accepted by the Wakulla County BOCC. The airport rules and regulations have been accepted by the Wakulla County BOCC. An airport zoning ordinance has already been passed by the Wakulla County BOCC. This is a shot of the airport zoning area. Immediate action. A recent FDOT inspection revealed trees have grown and have encroached the approach surface, creating a hazard. For obvious reasons, these obstructions are required to be removed per Wakulla County Ordinance 77-4. Property owners are typically required to remove obstructions that penetrate any clear zone identified in Ordinance 77-4. There's a possibility grant funding could be used for this scope of work. It's important to note that the airport license was extended only to August 31st, 2012. It's about 6 weeks away due to these violations. A corrective action, scope of work, and a project timeline was developed to address and remove the hazards. You can see we are waiting. First black box that we have is funding request made to Chipley, District 3. Possible agreements. Tentatively agree to implement the addition of buffers and beautification features as well as green sustainable technology. Tentatively agree to reallocate current FDOT grant funding to fund a tree survey and tree mitigation for license renewal. Fund minor airport layout plan modifications if needed. Fund property appraisals. Fund environmental impact studies. And any remaining balance would be applied towards property acquisition. Tentatively agree not to fund updating the airport master plan. And I thank you all very, very much. If there's any questions of the board, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
If you would go back to where Quincy, the income for Quincy Airport.
Okay. Bear with me, Commissioner. I'm clicking as fast as I can. Oh, that was it, wasn't it? There you go.
As I see it at, you got $1,686,000 total project in revenue,
That is the projects, correct.
and all of that money comes from government money.
The 1,686 comes from government money. The 360,500 is from fuel sales and revenue of other tie downs, hangar rents, things like that.
Yes, first, I'd like to apologize to the board and our first speaker and everyone here for being late. There was a large tree down across my driveway, and I have a circle drive, so I backed up thinking I could go around the other loop and found two huge limbs down on that side, which fortunately I was able to move. Had a few more obstacles, hadn't budgeted to run an obstacle course, so I apologize. And who was the first speaker? What?
John Russell.
Okay, John Russell. I did have an appointment with you once. I'm sorry we didn't actually get to meet. Is the gentleman that I met with that you had set up the appointments with, is he here?
He wasn't able to make it yet.
Emergency.
Oh, shoot, because my understanding in meeting with him, and this is a question for you, is that the major thing that was affecting your license had to do with the width of the runway and not trees.
Both. Correct. With the licensure, technically from an airport layout perspective, the width of the primary surface, which needs to be 250 feet, like John said, 125 off of the center line, could be a minimum of 250 if the runway's lined up right in the middle. Otherwise, it has to be 125 from each side. That is an issue. The other issue now is that in the approach surface, these trees have grown up above the 20-to-1 that is called out in not only federal aviation requirements, but state aviation requirements and our local ordinance also. So there can be nothing penetrating. There's multiple zones. It gets very
Well, I
complex.
thought it just meant that you had a shorter functional runway.
Well, that you can do, that is an option, actually, as the trees grow up. You can move what they call the displaced thresholds closer and closer and closer, but we are already to a point where the runway is as short as you'd ever want to see, particularly a grass runway. And moving those is
It
a
was
hazard.
just surprising when the thing you listed that needed to be addressed was the trees, when what had been communicated to me was the single thing that needed to be addressed was the runway width, and that the trees could, that you could shorten the runway. That wasn't the major issue.
Let me just clarify. You're absolutely correct, Commissioner Arts. That was an immediate need that just arose as an outcome of our last inspection. They go out and inspect annually, and during this inspection in March, they identified trees that had grown up into the approach surface. When they establish what's called the displaced threshold, they shoot a 20-to-1 angle. And trees have grown up, so that's an immediate need. The issue with the width of the runway has existed since 2004. So that is an issue with the layout plan. The trees growing is a secondary issue that became immediate because it was determined in our last inspection that these trees had grown up into this. They do this routinely every year to see if the approach surface is clear and whether or not people have built whatever, antennas or trees or billboards or whatever. That's part of an FDOT license inspection.
Would it be inaccurate to say, though, there's no reason to deal with the trees if we don't come to a decision about widening the runway? Is that not accurate? We aren't going to get relicensed unless the runway's widened. We can do whatever we want with the trees, and we still aren't going to get relicensed unless the runway's widened.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I don't see why we're talking about trees.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I did, if you don't mind, I'd like to just address Commissioner Moore's comment about the $1.686 million. I think it's important to note that it is the users of airports that pay this. This is coming from the airport fuel tax surcharge. So it is the users of airports that this fund was established for. So it is the users of airports that's where those dollars come from.
Let me see your expenses on that sheet also.
I believe the administrator for the Gadsden County Airport is here, and I believe she will be speaking. If you'd like to hear from her now, I'll be happy to acquiesce, or if you'd like to wait.
No, that's not necessary.
It's not necessary. I believe she'll speak during the citizens portions, but I'll be happy to let her come up. Are there any other questions?
Steve, have we got any data on presently how many people use the airport monthly, or do we know that?
There are some estimates that I had seen. I can't recite them off the top of my head. John, do you recall, was it in the 6,000 range? Operations?
Yearly.
And they laugh, but you have to realize that an operation is a takeoff or a landing.
Okay.
Every weekend I can go out and I'll do 25 or 30 operations myself. Just simply.
Yeah, but for me, as a commissioner, I need to understand. I mean, I just need to know some data for rationale for spending any money, whether it's county money or any kind of government money. Excuse me. I mean, do we keep a log? Is there some way that there's trips in and out, flights in and out that's logged in by somebody, or?
We do have, actually, the owner of Hammondknockers is here, and he kept a log of people that flew into the airport. They'd sign in his book voluntarily. So some of that data will be presented, I think, and some of that is actually going to be handed to you as soon as I'm done. I'll show you some of those.
There's nothing official because there's no county person out there.
Right. It's very difficult to get. And the downside is that, again, when you have an unimproved airstrip and you have no fuel, it's not a draw. It's not appealing for pilots to come to. You always want to top off your tanks when you land. You always, every time you land, you want to top off. I mean, that's just we pull up to the fuel pumps, first thing you do, top me off. You go park the airplane. If there's enough fuel, you pull up, they top you off, and you're ready to go on your return. So that's a big negative for us. The second, of course, is the unimproved airstrip. I can tell you that any retractable gear aircraft, almost every retractable gear aircraft has a 8 or 10-fold deductible on the insurance if you land as an unimproved airport, if you land at a grass strip. Hard surfacing the runway would significantly improve the viability of this airport and bring in many more folks. If you go to Cedar Key, it's just amazing. Every time I go to Cedar Key, I'm just totally in awe. Every weekend, that little airport has airplanes lined up on each side. They're running taxis back and forth into Cedar Key, and I mean, it's just amazing how much revenue indirectly. I mean, you can talk about the direct cost, but you look at the indirect economic impact is just huge. And you're right, Commissioner, it is hard to quantify that. It is difficult to get your hands around that. But I apologize if I couldn't answer your question any better.
We just had a 500-year emergency. What was the airport doing during this emergency?
There was the about the north third to half of the runway had about a foot of standing water. The rest of it was dry.
Did you have any emergency flights in or out?
No.
Or any helicopters taken off? Or?
Not during Tropical Storm Debbie, nor during Dennis. Both of those events were short-lived. That's not to say that we're not exposed to a longer event, something like Katrina, where in case, certainly that would be the case. We also were, it's important I think to note that Tropical Storm Debbie, I think Surf Road was closed up until just a couple of days ago. So it's also important that if we lost the bridge, we lost Surf Road, and we lost Coastal Highway, I mean, that's your only avenue. Any other questions? Again, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to work as your volunteer airport manager. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask both sides of the issue to please respect each other. Please. If you don't agree, then you just don't agree.
I want to encourage people standing in the doorway before the next session starts. There are some chairs over here. Feel free to come in and sit down. Give you a couple minutes if there's anybody else. I don't know if there's anybody else in the doorway who wants to come in. No, there's even a chair. Are you standing in the chair with the phone? There's a chair right here in the front row. All right, we're going to ask the Ochlockonee Bay Alliance to come up.
I think I'll take a pointer here if I can try to get talk a little bit to some of the slides. First off, again, thank you very much for taking the time to
Make
listen
sure you
to
please
us.
speak into the mic.
Can you hear me now?
And you can
Better?
put the mic, move it
Yeah,
around
is
as
that a
you
little
need to. Yeah.
Yeah. So my name is Troy Mills, and I have a house on Surf Road. It actually sits at the end of the runway. It's been there since 1972. My grandfather built it. We've had a house there since the 1960s, and we're really excited to be able to talk to you today because, one of the things that you heard presented, saying that, that the Wakulla County Board of Commissioners have approved this, they've approved that, and none of those have we really been able to have a voice as residents right in this airport right next to us. So, what we want to talk to you today, make sure I get this, where do I got to point this here?
Maybe on.
Is it on? Is there? Oh, okay, got it. We want to talk about two things when it comes to this, the proposed airport expansion and, investment. First, are these costs justified for the taxpayers in Wakulla County? Secondly, we want to talk about, and we're going to demonstrate that we don't believe that these costs are justified. Secondly, even if we go there and assume that they are, is the Tarpine airstrip really where we want to put that investment? Is this the right location? So I'm going to jump real quick into the cost. So this quote here, and I don't have to read it to you, but basically this is from the FAA in 2009, talking about the self-sustainability, self-funding for small airports. And what the FAA says is that the vast majority of small airports cannot sustain themselves. They don't generate enough revenue and rely on the taxpayers in the county to fund their ongoing operations. It's pretty critical because what you heard before said, oh no, this is all free. And if we do the best we can, we'll be able to fund it. The FAA is saying something completely opposite. So the next thing, when you look around the area, so if we look at places such as Carabel, Apalachicola, and you can even look as far as Tallahassee Regional Airport. Not one of them is self-sufficient. They are all in the red. We met with the finance directors. We have a bunch of information. We can follow up after this. But every one of them is struggling. And the important thing, as you heard, we were number 99. We have the smallest runway compared to these other ones that are right here in our community, compared to Carabel, which is at 4,000 feet, compared to Apalachicola, which is at 5,200 for 3 different runways. But because of the location that the airstrip sits in, being landlocked, we have a drain on our revenue. And then in 2008, to make it even worse, the residents of Tarpine were granted easements so that they don't have to pay to access it. So we were lost to that area of revenue, right? And then more importantly, airports are supported by the adjunct businesses that sit around them, whether they're hotels, whether there's manufacturing. That's what drives revenue into the community. There's the location where it sits. There's nowhere that can happen because it sits landlocked in a coastal floodplain. Then lastly, when we think about costs, all of the expenses for this location, in terms of it sits in a floodplain. I'm going to show you some pictures. I thought it was very interesting saying how we're going to leverage this airport for all these safety and events like Debbie and Dennis. Our airport was shut down because it sits in a coastal floodplain. We have higher maintenance. We have security situation that has to be remedied. And then more importantly, where it sits, because of its proximity, you're going to have to pay a higher insurance. So what we would tell you is the cost liability ongoing for Wakulla County is not factored into any of these numbers that they've been presented. Let's talk about state funding. It's all free. It's all free money. We can get it. Don't we all wish that was true? Reality of it is, funding is not guaranteed. We have an agreement for a certain period of time for this year, but we're, at the end of the day, the state, based on the economic situation, can adjust that at any point. So when, we think about times where we took this state funding, the challenge is, once we do that, we're actually required now to maintain this property. We own the liability for it. So if they invest $4 million, they're going to want us to know, hey, look, sorry, there's an additional $1 million for you to fix. Well, you took our $4 million, you need to go spend that. So when we think about it, one of the discussions among the residents was, remember the Welcome Center? We had a bunch of pilings there. No one captured it. A little while later, it ended up costing the Wakulla taxpayers, I think somewhere between $40,000 and $70,000. We also have the situation and changes in regulations. That's really important. We're having the situation with the airport today because of changes in regulations. They're not stagnant. We are now going to be accountable to maintain any change in the regulation. You just heard them talk about, well, we're not going to take any properties. That's what our airport plan says. Well, next year they could FDOT, there could be an airplane crash, and they say, nope, based on the elevation, you have to take these properties. That's not funded by the DOT. And it's certainly not where I believe Wakulla County taxpayers want to put their monies. And then there's also the liabilities from a litigation standpoint. In any of those instances, it's going to be pretty contentious. My family, I know there's a number of families here that have been here since the 40s. This directly impacts us. We love the area, Surf Road. We love Panacea. We've been members of this community. We don't want to leave. It's not as a simple mathematical calculation says, okay, pay me this and I'm out. We're here to stay. And so if you don't think that there's going to be litigation, you're wrong. And then lastly, natural disasters. We just had it. It's a floodplain. It sits next to the bay. One of the things that we talked about was the fuel farm, right? That's what generates revenue. We really want to put a fuel farm 600 to 1,200 feet next to Oclocty Bay, which could potentially be an environmental disaster? can't wait to, I mean, the potential liability that represents is staggering. And as we mentioned, I think what the current funds today that are budgeted, that are in the state budgets that are published, are currently insufficient for this expansion and improvement. What you see here is the county 5-year CIP plan. It's a capital improvement plan. From the county, we're saying that starting in the current year, $181,000 going all the way up to $3.2 million. What you see right underneath that is the Department of Transportation's budget. This is their published budget. It says $435,000. We have a gap of $2.8 million. Now, I thought it was interesting, now the secretary from the Department of Transportation, they do have a 5% override, and they can make a change. It's about $8 million on a $176 million budget. We're number 99, as I saw, on the list. What makes us think that we get 25% of Florida's Department of Transportation allocation budget to get this put through? And then lastly, on the particular cost, you heard it said about the airport funding. The airport fuel is the tax on the fuel is what's funding these type of improvements. Well, if you can look at it here, the budget for the Department of Transportation, right, as you can see the line item on the aviation grants, is $176 million. Of that, about 22%, about 40 million of it, comes from aviation fuel tax. The vast majority of this is paid by normal motorists who are driving to and from work every day. This is not just paid by the people with the airplane. So when we think about the first question, are the costs justified? The operating costs are a drain on our county resources. Their future liabilities are a major concern. All of the things that you saw put up there, where we looked at the military and saving lives and doing life, that doesn't change. They can land anywhere. It doesn't have to be a state-funded platform, right? So I think that's what we have to really understand. Then lastly, we're also concerned about this funding, because with taking all of this money comes a great liability. We think it's a bad investment. So the next part, even if you said, that's completely, Troy, I just can't really get my head around it. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about, is this the right location for the Wakulla County and taxpayers to make the investment? The existing location sits in a coastal floodplain, and it's surrounded by a coastal floodplain. It's very difficult. It's an environmentally sensitive area. We're talking about putting things like fuel farms, destroying the natural barrier between the coast, chopping down trees. We're surrounded by residential neighborhoods. One of the things you heard was the discussion around the safety of the neighbors. We want to make it fly higher. What airports sit in residential neighborhoods? Is this where you would put it? There's no public access. And I know that, there's one sign and actually sits out front of my house that has a little airplane on it. All of the other access says tar pines, you can't get there. Do not enter. The public is not leveraging this asset. There's no adjunct businesses to create jobs, as I mentioned before, and it's not supported by the community with which it operates. That's why we're all here. That's why you've gotten so many emails. We think you can pick a better location. So, just to kind of make the point, these are pictures. This first picture is the proposed land that wants to be purchased. Let's see if, I don't know, is this how we do it? You can see the airplane here. One saw. This particular picture is 5 days after Debbie. An entire week after Debbie, this is still underwater. This is during Debbie, right? It took $100,000, and as they mentioned, of donations of sand to recover that runway. Now that would have to be covered by the county. That's not in the FDOT plan. And then you ask yourself, well, from a Wakulla County standpoint, who are these people all the way down in Panacea? Panacea sits on the very edge. I think at one point, you know, it used to, the coast of the bay was actually over into Franklin County. We're 3 miles from Canada across the bridge. When this little A here, that represents the geographic center of Wakulla County. As you can see, we're about equidistant to a major airport, the largest major airport in the region, that based on a recent article came out, said it's supposed to be serving 32 counties. This airport, the big one, still gets funded by about $800,000 to $900,000 a year through county and taxpayers. And that has every amenity that we could think of. The last point, I'm just going to leave up here. This has been a real awakening for the residents and the people from Surf Road and from the Occoquan Bay Alliance, because we don't feel that we've been adequately represented with the airport committee and what's been put there, which is why we were actually very appreciative of being able to stay and have this discussion. So, in conclusion, we think the BOCC should suspend the support of the present airstrip. Operating expenses, this all comes out of county funds, taxpayer funds. It doesn't come from the DOT. It's not sustainable. It's 99th out of 102. The data we got said it took them 10 years to try to turn things around, and even arguably we didn't see any type of numbers. There's nowhere for that location to generate the level of income needed to support itself. There's a big environmental impact. So, yes to ceasing the BOCC's report. You heard it, August 31st. Let it revert. It's still an airport, still an airstrip. It can still be used by the residents of Tarpine, as it is today. We don't have to cut trees. We don't have to maintain anything else. It stays as it is. The county loses the liability that it's going to face. We avoid all the legal and regulatory headaches I've already mentioned. And let's focus our time on things that actually add value to Wakulla County. With that, I'd like to answer any questions. Oh, sorry about that.
I have one question. You had said because of easements that were granted, people couldn't be charged to use the airport. And I just wanted to run that by our county attorney, because the gentleman who's not here seemed to feel strongly that we should be collecting fees from the users. And so is there a reason why we couldn't?
Yeah, my understanding is that, as you heard, the Tarpine residents have been doing a lot of the maintenance on the airstrip itself, mowing the lawn, doing the different things. And then in response to that, the county granted them easements, which allows them free access to that airstrip.
Ms. Arts, the Wakulla County Airport rules and regulations that are in force, Section 12.45, airport access fees. All property with direct access to the Wakulla County Airport is subject to access fees as follows. Per buildable lot or home site, $120 a year. Per non-commercial hangar, $120 a year. Per commercial hangar, $240 a year. Now, whether that's being collected properly, that's a different subject, but it is. They're not supposed to use it for free.
Okay.
And it's my understanding that In the past, they have been collected, and I know that certain property owners pay them now.
Yes,
I think we just need to make a bigger push.
It'd definitely be
We
improved on.
definitely have to make a bigger push to collect those.
Okay, just what I heard didn't
That's
fit
right.
with what the other gentleman had said. Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's confusing because as we look at it, it says that, the grant for an easement for the purpose of ingress and egress for use, operation, maintenance, and to and from the Tar Pond subdivision to the Wakulla County Panacea Airport. So that's where the confusion lies.
Commissioner
Thank-
Stewart, you have a question?
Yeah, David, help me remember what the DOT guy was telling us, and I wish he were here. Once we commit to this grant funding from DOT, are we required, or could we be required to expand further should some scenarios happen like this gentleman suggested, where you had a crash and it's, you got to expand?
According to when we talked with Dave Roberts, what he said actually DOT is, if you remember, they're actually shrinking down the majority of their requirements. Instead of used to be a 30-to-1, now it's a 20-to-1. They've started, if anything, they're contracting regulations because more and more airports are being maintained and built within residential areas. And to also answer another question is, once we accept the funding of the major funding, not the minor funding that we've got going on now, but the millions of dollars of funding, that will come along with a 20-year operational. We have to guarantee that we'll operate the airport for 20 years. After that, it can be reverted back to Tar Pine. We can do whatever we want to with it, but that's the stipulation that comes with that.
But as airport rules change, and I don't know how often they update them, is it annually or whatever? I
Right.
just remember there was some conversation about, as that changed, that there could be some requirements for Wakulla County to comply by
Right.
having to do whatever to the airport to make
Right,
it come into
but
compliance.
his point, though, I think, was this airport will never be anything other than what it is currently as far as the type of aircraft that fly in there. It's not going to be, you're not going to have jets, you're not going to have Lear jets landing there, or G4s or any of that stuff. You're not going to have that. We don't have the width nor the length for that.
Mr. Mike, he just mentioned something there that once we take this money, we're required to maintain it for 20 years. And who determines as to what that maintenance will be? They will have requirements of what maintenance means to them, and we have to maintain that according to their direction.
With local funding or with...
That's what he said. If we're maintaining it, it must come...
We would have to, through the fees that are currently being, that are in our ordinance, we'd have to maintain the airport based upon that. Now, whether there's some, state or DOT or federal funding that comes along, I couldn't tell you that. I don't think so. I think we have to fund it ourselves.
Well, I'm back to the original question, and maybe you guys, and I hate to say you guys and those, and I want us all to be together on this, and I think there's somewhere hopefully we can find some middle ground, but I'm still concerned about how many flights go in and out of that airport monthly, and of that X number, how many are local residents and how many are outsiders, if you will, and then again, how many of those outsiders stay here for a period of time? Or they just, I can't imagine somebody just saying, well, let's stop into Panacea. Maybe they want to go eat or something, and that's great, and that's good for our local economy, but I need to know that number, and that helps me make a decision about how much it's worth to all of Wakulla. Or is it just local folks that's using the airport? Somehow I just can't believe we don't have that data, that you can't get that data from somewhere.
I can give you a partial answer to that. I have been keeping a log for several months of that. Memorial Day weekend, there were 2 flights from runway 180, that's the south. There may have been more up to the north. There were 2 flights of all of Memorial Day weekend. And all of our neighbors had housefuls of people there, and their houses that were generating to the economy. 2 flights.
We would argue that we're bringing the residents, we bring families, friends, everybody into the residence. We use all of that piece as well. So we would argue that, at a minimum, they offset.
If I may, can I address that? I'd just like to clarify. Just to be clear, as good neighbors, we try very hard to always depart to the north and arrive to the south. That means that folks along the coast, the coastal properties there that most of the opposition is from, so the coastal properties, don't ever see our operations. The only time we go so far as to take off with a tailwind. As long as it's not a significant tailwind, we will take off to the north to try to avoid and try to appease our neighbors. And so when they say, well, there are only two, that is absolutely not correct. I mean, there are many more, and there are many more throughout that they're not aware of because we make a very conscious effort to depart to the north. Those two that you saw, that did arrive from the south were probably transient pilots, and there are a huge number of transient pilots that you'll be hearing from soon that are from out of the area that utilize the airport. So I want to be sure. We've been working very hard to try to be good neighbors and depart to the north and arrive to the south, even at the detriment somewhat of our procedures.
David, if you remember, I asked the DOT, you remember I asked the DOT man, why don't we just have all the airplanes land from the refuge side and not have to do anything to the other side? And he told me that you have to have access from both sides. And I know, just anecdotally, as many years as I've lived in this area and driven by there, most planes I've seen do come over the refuge.
Right, that's because of the predominant wind.
That's right. You got to land with the wind.
Right.
And also to give you an idea of the magnitude, currently our budget is, we've spent to date $4,000 at the airport, and our total budget is about $6,000 that we'll spend. So that's the magnitude of what we're spending today.
That's the budget today, but when we spend the the thing that bothers me is that if we could take this money today and be rock solid that that's all the money we would ever spend, then it's a no-brainer. But I know government, and I know rules and regulations, and today they've got one set of rules and regulations, and tomorrow they set up another. And when we take their money, they're gonna make the decision as to how we operate this airport, the safety part of this airport. We may have to have fire trucks out there at some point, or a fire wagon close by, that whatever's. So it's today is one thing, but if you look down the road at what we could, and they've said, and we're going to maintain that airport for 20 years. That means we're going to have an airport manager. We take the $4 million, we're probably going to have to support an airport manager, and he's going to sit out there and watch the birds, I suppose. But
Can I just ask, in terms of the ongoing maintenance, I'd love to bring up Stan Brown and let him just address a little bit about, with the remaining time that I have, some about the ongoing maintenance, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. We've heard about the Quincy Airport, but what I checked into was the Apalachicola Airport, because it's really much closer to a coastal airport like ours. The Franklin County airport budgets are online. Any commissioner or any other person can go look at them if you go to franklincountyflorida.com. So they're there. In 2006, Franklin County budgeted $4,000 for insurance. They budgeted $5,000 for maintenance for their airport. Since 2006, they've taken $7,537,124 in grant money from FDOT. Their current budget, which they're addressing at their workshop today and on Friday, they have $34,800 for insurance. They have $30,000 for maintenance. I also, in the information that we gave to you right there, there's an email from the finance officer of Franklin County, and she states that she is fixing to do a transfer of $88,000 from the general revenue of Franklin County to the airport committee, to the airport budget fund, because they have all of these buildings, they have all these improvements, they built hangars, they can't rent them, they have to insure them, they have to maintain them. They have fuel sales, but they can't buy the fuel because they have to buy it $55,000 at a time to put into their fuel plant. So their airport didn't make money until 2010. They did break even in 2010, 2011. This year they're starting out $88,000 in the hole that they're having to take tax money from their county to support that airport. And they, like you, would be committed for the next 20 years to do so. Their problem is they're just like every one of us businessmen and everybody else in the county. When the county turns down, they are a business enterprise. They have hangars. They have to rent them to people. Those people have to make money. They make money from their fuel, but most of the money from the fuel is from jet fuel, which will not be available for us because jets can't land at our airport. So if you take a look at these other airports that are around, Quincy may have one numbers, but these are the numbers from Apalachicola, and those commissioners are fixing to spend $88,000 on that based on $7 million of improvements that they've gotten from the state of Florida. The Carabel Airport does not have a separate budget. They don't break their cost out in their city budget. The city clerk could only tell me that they couldn't buy fuel for their airport because they had to sell their fuel at a loss, and when they sold it at a loss, they didn't have enough money to buy more fuel, and the city didn't have more money to put in it to buy fuel. They paid an airport manager to maintain their airport, who's also a city employee because he does the maintenance in the rest of the city. But about 9 months ago, they didn't have enough money to pay him as airport manager, so they simply quit paying him. So he's still functioning as airport manager. They just can't pay him for it anymore. These are how these small airports go as you go with time. You can get the state funds, but it doesn't guarantee that you can operate it because you're operating as a business, basically. You're saying that we're going to build a hangar and we can rent it. Look at what happened to Apalachicola.
Sam, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yep.
On the airport expenses, if you go down to this column right here where it's the first blank area, it says airport expenditures excluding grants, which is, I guess, the operating expenditures of the airport. It says $793. Airport expenditures excluding grants.
Right.
And then we have total airport grant expenditures. Well, I assume that means they're spending grant money. Is that what that means? Is
Yep.
$711, given a total expenditures of 1.417. All right. Now it says airport revenues. Of course, this is all their jet sales, and it has. All right. Airport revenues excluding grants is $687. Correct.
Yes.
So in reality, if you exclude the grants, the difference between the two, it's still losing money. It's losing $705 minus $687.
If you look at their budget, and again, they're trying to put it together, they actually have 4 options, but their main source of income is sale of jet fuel. They estimate it to be $388,000 from jet fuel. And of that, they're making $1 a gallon on their jet fuel. So that's basically their biggest source of income. If they can rent their hangars, then that source of income is $99,000.
It also appears to me that they did a budget analysis based on $1 per gallon surcharge. Based on, at $1.25 a gallon, they start making money. At $1.25 with rental of paint hanger for $2,000, they make more money. So it looks to me like this was, if they would do $1.25 a gallon surcharge, they'd make money. I just want to be sure I understand this. This looks like a budget preparation.
It is a budget prep sheet, yeah. They're trying to put it together, but I'll point out to you that what happened in Carabel is they had the fuel there, but they were so expensive they couldn't sell it. Nobody'd buy it. They landed elsewhere. So they had to lower the cost of the fuel to sell it, in which case they then couldn't replenish and took a loss on it.
I understand. I just wanted to be clear on the numbers.
What is the period of time if fuel is good? I know that I don't stop at Joe Blow's single pump tank because I'm afraid his fuel is off. And if I'm driving an airplane, I'm certainly not going to go into an airport that doesn't sell any fuel or has very little fuel sales.
Yeah, he would be better to answer that than I, because I don't fly.
I would also say that you're talking about Apalachicola,
Yes.
and you're talking about St. George Island, an island with hundreds of million-dollar homes and people who fly airplanes, who fly jets, and who have a lot of money. And if they can't support that airport, we can't do it on nobody.
What I think the commissioners, what I wanted you to recognize is they've gotten the state funding to buy and build hangars and other capital improvements, but what it's done is increased their expenses.
Of course.
Their insurance and their maintenance have, almost quadrupled or gone up higher over that period of time, and they have to rent those, or else they have to supplement it with county funds, and that's exactly what they're fixing to do to the tune of $88,000. It's $88,000 coming out of their county budget to support the airport. They don't have that anymore.
But just to be clear, I'm not advocating one side or the other, that $88,000 could be grant money. That's not necessarily ad valorem taxes.
Read her email.
Well,
Read the last sentence of her email.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Let's hear from Mr. Russell. I think Mr. Foltz would like to make a quick rebuttal. I'm not sure the best way, because without having DOT here, I was waiting for DOT here to come and say, well, they're right about this, they're wrong about that, and right now it really is he says, she says still, which is disappointing.
He says.
He says, he says, true.
Mr. Ori can answer a lot of your DOT questions.
The question that you were addressing was
I'll
how long
just
could
go ahead
fuel
and
last?
address the fuel. Avgas does not go bad. It's refined to the extent that it can sit in tanks for years, or an airplane, or wherever. Also, Mr. Stewart, just to address your study, yes, there can be a study done for all of this through the master plan. All these things can be evaluated and studied.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Foltz, quick rebuttal at the microphone.
We have some time. I'd like Mr. Pfeiffer. He has experience with the Wakulla Airport, which is an ex-military base that has 3 runways that is not even comparable with our airport there. It's apples and orangutans.
Okay, briefly, sir.
Alan Pfeiffer. I rent a hangar at Tarpine, and I'm a resident of Ball Point, and I'm also president of Concerned Citizens of Franklin County. Have extensive knowledge of this. Let's deal with Carabel first. Carabel took the money, was without fuel for 5 months because they took the money that they used for fuel sales and used it to cover deficits in the general budget, so they couldn't replace the fuel. As far as Apalachicola is concerned, that's a designated reliever airport for Tallahassee. It's got 3 5,000-foot runways. It's got extensive infrastructure. It had a fixed-based operator, and the county commission loves that airport. They're always trying to get new grants. They make the 10% off the grants. I'm not going to tell you how wise some of these decisions are. They've just built a new paint hangar, a 30,000-square-foot paint hangar with no tenant. They built offices and other hangars without a tenant simply because they can get the grant money, and they've made money off of it. But they recently lost the long-term fixed-based operator there, and the county has just taken it over. And they have reported in the last 2 commission meetings about all the money they're making off fuel sales, and should have done this a long time ago. They have over 100 T hangars all rented, or excuse me, over 75 T hangars all rented. And they're expecting a substantial increase in net revenue. But this is not a comparable airport at all to do any type of comparison. But I just thought the commission would like to know that. This is apples and oranges.
Thank you for the clarification. Mr. Smith, did you have a statement you wanted to make? I know they indicated that you would. Okay. Are you all finished with your presentation?
I think so.
Okay.
We'll have comment right there as well.
All right, excellent. Again, we're going to have some discussion amongst ourselves with our county administrator. If you would like to have the opportunity to speak, how many cards do we have currently?
Let them speak first.
Do you want to let them speak first?
Yeah. We knocking off at 4, or we
Knocking off at 4.
Okay.
So
No, we don't. We can recommend we'll knock off at 4.
You're gonna be
Everyone is going to get 1 minute to speak. Make sure your comments are concise.
we don't really have to make any. I mean, if we run over, we can just adjourn the workshop, and we don't have to discuss amongst ourselves. There'll be no resolution.
Right, you can't vote on anything today anyway, so.
But we're going to call you up in the order the cards have been turned in. It'll probably be last first. We can actually do it the other way today. To whoever turned their card in first will get to speak first. You'll get 1 minute. They're not in any kind of order, so we'll just go the way I normally do.
Give me 1 second. I have to use the restroom. I drink.
No worries.
It's a long time before we get a break.
Go ahead,
Yeah. We're going to start with Mr. Walt Dixon. When the bell rings, please stop.
Yes, sir. Walt Dixon, 97 North Lake Edding Lane, Crawfordville. I'm the guy that developed Tarpine Subdivision. I'm also a pilot. I've enjoyed a mini flight in and out of that airport. Probably flown in and out of that airport more than probably anybody in this room has. One thing I would like to say, they're talking about a fuel farm and how dangerous it is to the environment. There's a fuel farm at Oclockley Bay Marina that's within 50 feet of water. Angelo, and I'm going to pick on Angelo. Angelo has a fuel farm within 50 feet of water. The service station there at the corner of National Sands Road. There's a fuel farm within 400 or 500 feet of the water. So you got three right there, way a lot closer than what we would have there at the Wakulla County Airport. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jim Parham?
Mr. Russell spoke and said that at the end of his presentation to not do a master plan. He said an airport layout plan, but not a master plan. But then a moment ago, he said something about that some things could be addressed in the master plan. Well, there's one element in the master plan in particular that I'd like to draw your attention to, and there is a format, and it's section 5.11. This is from Wakulla County's master plan, airport master plan that was done in 1989. Section 5.11, alternatives. And what it says, in 1989, it said, the relocation alternative is, in our opinion, somewhat premature. The forecasts do not indicate a requirement for larger aircraft. However, forecasts can change. Pull up the data. Any of you go online, pull up the FAA data, see what size flights, airplanes, or the number of airplanes that are increasing in sales. It is the larger ones.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brenda Strickland? To be followed by Jane Harms.
I'm Brenda Fitzgerald Strickland. I lived in Tarpine for 18 years.
Make sure you pull this mic down.
Okay.
To it.
I lived in Tarpine for 18 years. My husband ran a business there. We were the office for the airport. We got phone calls. We would get 75 to 100 a year. I still get phone calls. I still have that same phone number. I'm not there anymore. I still get phone calls. They do not ask for Tarpine Airport. They ask for Wakulla County Airport. We had people come in. We would loan them our cars. They would go eat. They would come down to get groceries because they were going other places. That airport has been used for so many things. We have a person now at Carabel Airport that should be at our airport giving instruction, working on airplanes. He has 2 employees that work with him. If we had the facilities, he would be in this county because he lives here.
Thank you. Jane Harms to be followed by another Parham. I apologize for the handwriting. Raymond. But first up, Jane. Yep.
You intentionally do it left to right?
It's the cards. I don't know it by the names who all these people are for.
Hey everybody. I just want to say I agree with the anti-airport thing. My parents, as well as I, have been property owners down here for bazillion years. And it just doesn't make sense to trust the state of Florida with y'all's money. Thank you.
Okay. Ramisty Parham will be followed by Gene McMillan. I apologize for slaughtering handwriting.
You're going to lose a vote every time you mess up a name.
Please forgive me.
Hi, I'm Ramsey Parham, and our family has been here for 4 or 5 generations in Wakulla County, and enjoy it and appreciate the airport just as it is right now. Not anymore. It's not meant to be that. It's never has, and it's locked in and with land, and we don't mind at all what private planes come over, but the beauty is in us having families down for to spend tax dollars in your county, our county. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Gene McMillan to be followed by Carol Odell.
I'm Jean McMillan, and I live on Ocklackney Bay, and I've been in Wakulla County since the 1960s. I don't think it's a true statement or a complete statement that the community is opposed to the airport, because there are many that aren't here today that are in favor of seeing that we don't lose this airport. I feel that businesses are suffering all over Wakulla County. And the businesses in those areas, as well as the county, are going to benefit because they're going to come here, they're going to stay in the motels, they're going to stay in the RV parks, they're going to eat, they're going to buy food. We have holiday campground, and we send people to dentists, doctors, where they can go for medications. And we want to be compatible with our neighbors, but there are those of us that realize that you can't compare. Now, say one more thing. You can't compare what is now with the condition that I'm told that the airport is in. So it's what it could do if it's improved and we don't lose it.
Thank you. Carol Dell, to be followed by John Andrew Smith.
Carol O'Dell, Oclockonee Bay. Thank you for this opportunity. I have in my folders, which I will hand out to you, petitions that were signed by over 370-something people that agree that Wakulla County Airport is an asset. It is a county airport, and agree that improvements should be maintained for safety standards. I also have the Hammondknockers guest book that pilots signed over the years when Hammondknockers was open, and you could see the number of people that came for a short period of time. I don't have them all, but I do support your the airport. I think it could really be a revenue producer, although some people don't believe that, but I do, and I hope you make the correct decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. John Andrew Smith, to be followed by Ralph Smith.
Thanks, sir. I live at Surf Road, right at the end of the airport. I've been coming down as a weekender for over 50 years. Several things, and I will speak real quick and frank, so I apologize up front. Number one, this airport was in violation of your ordinances in 1977 when it was created. When it was platted, the tar pine was platted, and it was in violation of your 1977 ordinance. Had you had appropriate enforcement of your ordinance alone, you would have no problem right now. So it's not just tar pine people that are involved in this. Quite frankly, the county has. The other thing, and I'll say real quick, is that the first I heard about this, and even today, the thing that offends me most about this whole thing is the lack of notification when it was being done. In 2006 and 2007, when this was developed, it was orchestrated by Commissioner Kessler, who happened to be the chairman of that committee. There was no notification whatsoever, and all of a sudden it was just adopted. And I've got to completely say this for just a second. The same thing that happened with Mr. Kessler, and the same thing that happened in this community when he ramrodded this thing through the commission in 2007, just happened to you a few minutes ago, and you didn't know it. You were told that the airport layout plan has been amended. You are the only one that can amend the airport layout plan. You are the only one that can put it in a plan, the major plan. You, not this committee, are the only one that can send it to Tallahassee and get money based on...
Thank you. Okay. Ralph Smith, to be followed by Leanne Mills.
My name is Ralph Smith. I'm married to Marjorie Smith. Her two brothers and her own the property that we've had since her parents died. Her father bought the property. It's right next to the Terry Lee and the Bradford, Ledford. In 1945, we've been using it continuously since then and hope to continue using it. But I concur with what I've heard from the other people from our group that oppose this, but had there been proper licensing of the airport, all of these questions would have been answered. There would have been an environmental assessment that would have been made. There would have been a site selection study. there would have been a master plan that covers all of these things, and any amendments to it would all show the use that's being made. But I think from everything that I have heard, this is a private facility that was given to the county by Fenton Jones, and it hadn't cost the county very much to be the owner, but
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
it's in effect the private airport of the Tarpine people that can afford airplanes.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Leanne Mills, to be followed by Randy Dinker.
Hi, I'm Leanne Mills. My brother is Troy Mills. I've been coming here since I was 3 or 4 years old. Troy Fain was our grandfather. We live at the very end of that airport and that airstrip. To us, it's just an airstrip. It's a piece of land. If you're going to build a new airport, you should think about where you want to build it, because you're basically taking that much money and putting it to building an entirely new airport. I agree with the two gentlemen before me. I just feel like it's benefiting the few and paid for by the many. And the other residents of Wakulla, they have no idea that they're paying for it. The operating costs, I mean. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Dinker, followed by Tom Hardy.
Chairman, I would ask that a hard time to given this is the legal counsel, I think they have some salient points, and maybe a little bit more latitude.
If we'll allow you the 1 minute, and if someone would like to ask you at the end to back up for more answers, they can call you back up.
Thank you. My name is Randy Dinker. I'm an attorney with Dinker Law Firm in Tallahassee, and for the past 34 years I've been doing primarily environmental litigation and land use and property law. I heard from one of the speakers, I'm representing the proponents of the airport. I heard from one of the opposition members what sounded like a threat that there was going to be litigation and liability on the part of the county, and I'd just like to address that, which my clients have asked me to do. This airport has been there since 1963, and the houses that are on Surf Road that are, I have heard a number of people opposing the airport today, have been zoned for airport use for over 30 years. So you have 5 homeowners on Surf Road who I think are affected, and they bought their properties according to the property records in 1990, 1996, 2001, 2010, and 2011. So it was all airport zoning at the time that they bought it, and they knew what activities could occur there. In addition, Wakulla County, excuse me?
Thank you.
I would like to hear another minute or two.
Why don't you ask Ms.
We'll do at the end. We're going to do, and we'll have you come back up. So we'll have, because we're not going to yield time at this moment. I think that'll cause chaos. Okay. People will start yielding time on both sides to people, and but we will probably have you back.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
I believe Tom Hardy was next. Excellent. Betty Lee is going to speak after him.
Yeah, my name is Tom Hardy. I live 2301 Surf Road. I'm also a property owner in Tarpine, and I just support whatever it takes to keep the airport open. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty Lee, to be followed by Bill Anderson.
My point has already been brought before the commission.
Betty Lee yields. Bill Anderson, to be followed by Payne Midyett.
I'm Bill Anderson. We cover a bunch of things very quickly. Through a public records request of the county's budget for the airport, I requested it in March, so it's through February. The budgeted revenue was $2,000. You actually collected $120, 5% of what you had budgeted. The expenditures should have been $2,770. They exceeded that by about 150%. Your loss was 428% greater than you budgeted for this airport through February. On the narrative report filed in 2008 with the BOCC, which is on your thing, says that this airport is utilized less than 5% of its capacity. It's utilized very little. Mr. Stewart asked about the number of flights. Caribou is 44 a month. I think that's a very comparable airport.
I'm not on the committee, but on the airport committee. I sat there on May 29th. They had an informal discussion of how many flights came in and out. They estimated 4 to 5 per day at your airport committee. Several other things that you may not even think about. The lift station on Surf Road number 5, which the runoff from this airport, from the pictures I took earlier that you showed, is completely overwhelmed, and you're running right now pumps, which will be increased with the runoff in the future.
Payne Midyett to be followed by Terry Lee.
Thank you. I'm Payne Midyett. We have a home we built in 1972 on Surf Road. I can't quite figure out in the map. I think that we may be in the part that would be taken away from us, but I'm not sure of that. My concern is the value in the property or possibly losing it. But more importantly than that, I think you ought to consider is there's been a lot of projections made, and government makes projections. Normally they don't meet them. I hope you will seriously consider the ramifications of an overrun in your operational cost and the county having to go dip into their normal tax money or their transportation money to pay for the overrun. And I have one other personal concern. I heard this gentleman say that the property would revert if the airport was abandoned to the Torpine people, and if that's correct, that needs to be corrected.
Okay. Terry Lee to be followed by Dave Lahart.
I yield. I just appreciate being able to see you.
Okay. No speak. Dave Lahart. Dave Lahart's to be followed by Matt Maddox.
One of my favorite characters was Deep Throat. Y'all remember Deep Throat?
Sorry.
He had, oh, come on, you do. He had one bit of advice. Follow the money.
Well, that's a good...
Follow the money is what Deep Throat said. And I would ask you to do that too. Who is going to benefit and who is going to profit from the airport expansion? If you pave that runway, think of the additional runoff that's going to be coming across Surf Road. Thank you.
Matt Maddox to be followed by Mary Maddox.
My name is Matt Maddox, and we just purchased a home recently on Surf Road to retire, and we love it down here. But the thing is that the airport, I don't mind it like it is, but this is a bunch of garbage to me, that we would spend that kind of money in that hole. We went over there and took pictures in this little tropical storm. It wasn't a hurricane. And I can't believe that we would even consider putting money into that hole over there. And I hope that you guys will think about that.
Thank you. Mary Maddox to be followed by Don Lesh.
Yes, as Matt told you a moment ago, we're the new kids on the block. We really love this area. We love all the fishing, and we're not airplane people, and I understand why they want to be able to fly their planes. We have no problem with them considering keeping that airport as it is, but I don't understand why you would think about putting an airport in there, in that flood zone. We have the pictures here, and it was really a mess. And you have the people that live there and built homes there. I'm pretty sure the commissioners come up with, or the planning and zoning come up with rules and regulations that all the homeowners have to have and follow. And you put those houses up 25 and 30 feet in the air, and you're talking about putting a runway on in that hole of water over there, and the plane hangars over there in the same spot. What are you going to do? Are you going to have selective enforcement? You're going to enforce one thing on us and something else on the people at Torpines. And I'd like to give you this.
You can hand it to Evelyn. It'll go in the record. Thank you.
Yes.
Don Lesh to be followed by Stan Brown. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very
very much. My name is Don Lesh, 2489 Surf Road. I am not a pilot, an economist, an engineer, so I speak only as a resident of Surf Road. My basic point, I have several pages, but my basic point is that transforming Tarpine's current small grass airstrip, which is located in a high-hazard floodplain surrounded by saltwater marsh, into a paved runway with a fuel farm and other amenities makes neither business sense nor environmental sense. Furthermore, it would be directly with the ancillary erection of chain link fences and so on, which has been discussed, topped by barbed wire. It would be entirely contrary to the soon-to-be completed Ocklawakanee Bay bike and pedestrian trail, which has been very handsomely completed in the Masha Sands area and will be coming to Surf Road. I'm skipping all the rest. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Stan Brown to be followed by Charles Golden.
Commissioners, as a commission, y'all have been courting that airport for 35 years. You've had very little money to expend or anything else. You're fixing to decide whether you're going to marry it or not, because if you go forward, you're going to commit to 20 years with that airport. As a taxpayer, I tell you, determine if we need an airport in Wakulla County bad enough to warrant spending $4 million of taxpayers' money. Is the need elsewhere greater that $4 million could be spent, whether it's in our county or any other county? Is that a good use of $4 million of tax money? I want you to answer that first and then decide if this is where we need an airport runway. Do we need it? And is it warranted? Is this the best place for it? That's your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles Golden to be followed by Bill Russell.
Excuse me from there.
I'm Charles Golden. I have two questions mainly. Is there a written plan if an airplane was to crash in that river out there? Who's going to do how about survival and stuff? Is there an emergency plan already written? Yes or no?
Sir, we don't run the airport day-to-day operations.
Anybody in here know? I take that as a no.
Okay.
According to the airport committee, the meetings and stuff, what they have written, I was reading for them to get when they finish up the FDOT funds, when they're used up, they can apply for FAA funding. FAA funding will make everything, all the homes on the end of each runway go away. They're a lot stricter than what FDOT is. I've had to deal with FAA before. I used to do engineering work for FAA. We don't want to get FAA involved because that will be, I don't even think you're going to have enough distance for either runway if you take out 98 and Surf Road.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bill Russell to be followed by Mr. Richard Shepard.
Commissioner, I want to say that since 2005, you know property values in our county have just been slammed. They've been run down. I believe when a turnaround will come one day and having a good viable airport will help property values. The area along the coast has suffered more than anywhere else in the devaluation. I mean, mine's worth a third probably. But I think that when the turnaround comes, the airport's a good thing. Thank you.
Richard Shepard to be followed by Mike Morgan.
My name is Richard Shepard, and I support the airport improvements to Wakulla County, and I'm also a resident of Tarpine, and I own 2 homes in there, one right next to the lot that Jerry Moore owns.
Yeah, I definitely own a lot in Tarpine.
Mike Morgan to be followed by Steve P. Foltz II.
My name's Mike Morgan, and I've been using the airport for the last 20 years, and I live in Medart. I own a home in Tarpine right now that we just purchased. And just real quick, we were flying our plane 5 days after Tropical Storm Debbie. The other things that I was going to say real quick is that if there was a place down there to paint airplanes, if I could move Apalachicola's airplane painting booth to Wakulla County, I'd be down there right now.
Thank you, sir. C.P. Foltz II, to be followed by Janice Watson, who's with the Quincy Municipal Airport.
My name is Stephen Foltz II, son of Steve Foltz. I go to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. It's an aviation college, and when I first started, I was reading books about this happening with eminent domain and this scenario, and it was crazy. It made me sad that people would lose an airport, and it's happening to us. And this is my life, man. And I love aviation. I love flying. I love everything about it. I love how it boosts the economy. I think it would be a real shame if we lose this airport. That's my opinion. People are entitled to their own opinions, but it'll be quite a shame. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Janice Watson, to be followed by Diane Wilson.
My name is Janice Watson, and I've been here before representing Appalachian Regional Planning Council for clarification. As a part-time job, I am the administrator of the Quincy Municipal Airport. And I'm not here to say yay or nay, but I am here to say we are an open book. And I am more than happy to share any information, reports. You asked for expenses earlier, a breakdown of what he had. I have 5 copies of our budget expenditure report as of June the 30th. I'm willing to give you as much information as I possibly can so that you make an educated decision about what is going to be fiscally sound for the county to do. Just a couple things. We charge 50 cents a gallon surcharge. The credit card company takes 10 cents. We get 40 cents. We sell about 75,000 gallons a year. We have 63 hangars that are rented. Can y'all hear me? I'm sorry. 63 hangars that are rented. We're building 12 more. I have a waiting list of 25 names, people wanting to go into a hangar right now. So, anyway, thank you.
Can I ask her a question? We might call her back at the end for questions.
Okay, I'd be glad to. And should I give these to her? I've got these
You can
copies.
give a copy to Evelyn, and we'll get the other 4 between us. Diane.
Oh, I want a copy as well.
Diane Wilson, to be followed by Terry Hinchy.
Diane Wilson. I live in Ocklawakanee Bay, technically Tarpine in Ocklawakanee Bay. We moved here in 2004. My husband retired from aviation. He'd been in aviation forever. And when he retired, he wanted to continue with aviation. It was his passion. We bought here so that we could bring our money into Wakulla and spend it. We love being here. We love the community. We love the environment. It would be devastating to us to lose access to the airport should that happen. And if the county doesn't maintain it and doesn't agree to keep it, I'm afraid that Tarpine will not be able to keep it. And we will all lose the benefit of that airport forever and ever. And who knows what it might become. It could be another mobile home park. It could become warehouses. There's no telling. You need to hang on to that airport while you can and take advantage of it for the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry Hinchy, to be followed by Mark Land. Supports the airport, waives their ability their time to speak. Mark Land, to be followed by Tim Jordan.
Thank y'all. I'm for the airport, and I've listened to a lot about the runoff, and I don't think any of that's nothing that couldn't be handled by proper engineering. You know, it looks like there's going to be a study or a plan done, and, you know, people talk about the runoff and all these other items, but they keep buying houses down there, don't they? Thank you.
Tim Jordan, to be followed by Robert Welsh. Please don't clap.
I'll lose those.
Tim Jordan, I just want to talk about the positive aspects economically of the airport. We've had mechanics in there. We've had a charter service. We've had, I think Mike's painted planes. We've had airplanes built in there. And I'm seeing marinas and businesses dry up. And we to be a viable community, I think we need an airport.
I think is very important. And the safety aspect, I was there when the gentleman missed the airport. He was landing on a grass wet strip, and that alone to me justifies its existence. He was one of the fatalities, and it was pretty bad. So I hope you support it.
Thank you. Robert Welsh, to be followed by Terry Meek.
I'm Robert Welsh, and I support the airport. I'm an environmental contractor. We do work in Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. I use the airport monthly to quarterly to work in this area for sales trips and projects. As part of environmental, we install underground storage tanks, we remove them, build landfills, so forth. With the current federal SPCC regulations, an underground storage tank is double contained, and it has backflow prevention, so forth. It would not be any type of environmental hazard except water would get into the tank. No fuel can get out in modern day tanks. But one gentleman said follow the money, and I hope you do, because it's proven that airports will benefit the citizens and taxes.
Thank you. Terry Meek, to be followed by Steve Wilson.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The improvements outlined for the airport will make it a desirable general aviation airport that will attract people, that will bring money, that will add to the taxes that are collected for the county. But it's necessary for all the reasons that were stated earlier to do that. I recommend that you contact the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, which represents general aviation nationally, and maybe ask some questions of them, because the AOPA has documented that a good, viable general aviation airport in your community will bring revenue to your community and is an asset to your community. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Wilson, to be followed by Sandra Foltz.
Steve Wilson, you heard from my wife earlier. We moved down here in '04. I was director of flight operations. I was director of flight. I was chief pilot. I've landed an airplane in Fort Lauderdale where the only thing above water was a runway. So that can happen anywhere. I was also been exposed to fuel pollution at LaGuardia because they weren't taking care of the tanks. That can happen anywhere. I look at this alliance right here is taking from me. Not just the airport, they're taking from me. I listen to their boats go up and down the Motley Bay. They're louder than the airplanes. And there's more of them. They have their fuel farm, but they want to take from me. I paid $6,000 taxes on an airplane I'm building to the state. I should have the right to use it. They're taking from me. The airport's been here since '77. I moved here because of the airport.
Thank you. Sandra Foltz, to be followed by Edward Lingelbach.
I'd just like to say I agree with
Could you
what
come?
Steve said.
Okay. No, perfect. Waives your chance to talk. Edward Lingelbach, followed by Dan Hinchy. No, Forrest, Dan Hinchy. Sorry. Losing.
All right, I'm going to be fast. I'm Dan Hinchy. I live in Ocklawakanee Bay. I support the airport. I'm not part of this alliance. I'm probably the only person with any real information and documentation for Mr. Stewart. I ran Hammondocker's Oasis. Sitting on my counter was a sign-in book. Sitting on my counter. I didn't ask anybody to sign it. I didn't force anybody to sign it. They signed it at their own will. You can see all the pages here of non-tarpine pilots. Okay? I think there's a copy of this in the literature that was given out earlier. I estimated at my business, I served plane-wise, I don't know how many people are on each plane, 10 to 15 a week, okay? So extrapolate that out however you want. 1 or 2 on the weekend, I don't know about that. 10 to 15 a week is what I served in our area. And a lot more landed and used our area and took cabs and went other places. So it is a used asset. It's a great asset for the county. I'd like to see it continue to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Forrest Coxon, to be followed by Finley McMillan. And after that will be Alan Pfeiffer as our last speaker.
Thank you. I'm Forrest Coxon. I bought my home
on Magic Sands in 1962. I was a pilot in the Second World War, Navy pilot. I've got over 7,000 hours now. I became an architect and traveled for the as state school architect for the Department of Education. I used all of the small county airports, and thank goodness that you had them. They were a service to me. I was also, because I had an architect and flying over to all of the small airports in the county, I was asked to serve on the Florida Aviation Advisory Council. This is the one that you're talking about. The money that we're talking about here is FAA money. It's given to by the federal government, the FAA, and they turn it over to the state DOT to administer. I just thought you wanted to know. It's 100% grant, and of all the time that I spent on the advisory council, it's good money, and please take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Finley McMillan? Yep, no, Finley McMillan, then you. You'll be last. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone so excited. And last will be Alan Pfeiffer. I try to follow the names as best I can.
My name is Finley McMillan. I've been living here for a long time, 60-something years, I think. I used to use the airport. I used to fly in the airport. I've taken off in 6 inches of water there, but water's no problem. And I stand bearing down there, the water goes right on down. What is a problem is how could Wakulla County even think about doing away with an airport? How would you, come election time, it's going to be a major issue if it's not voted on the right way. It's going to be a major issue. I think you're going to find a huge majority of the people in this county want this airport. Don't throw it away. Take what you got. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Pfeiffer. No.
Alan Pfeiffer. I use the airport. I have a Cessna 182 that I've been based at for 8 years out of Tarpine. I use it for business almost exclusively in support of my business. I have brought in many people, flown them in, used area attractions from the aquarium in Panacea to Angelo's restaurant. But what I want to say is that this is a gem of an airport. It's in a destination. Close this airport, you're never going to build another airport in the county. If we don't keep this airport open, it's the end of aviation in the county. It's a destination. Think in terms of what the airport can be in the future rather than what it is today. Thank you very much for the support that you've given, and I hope you see clear to keeping the airport viable going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move forward with our conversation amongst ourselves, are there any people that you would like to have back? I got the impression you'd like to have back the attorney.
Yes.
Yes.
Could Miss? Thank you.
I want the little airport manager.
And then we'll have the airport manager come back also.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to continue. What I was saying when the timer went off was that the people who are complaining on Surf Road are all zoned airport zoning. They're in the runway protection zone, I believe. And what your Wakulla County code does is what your Wakulla County code does is actually really good. I was impressed with the fact that you had this code. It says that if somebody is selling property that's in the airport zoning, the seller has to, in writing, inform the buyer that it's zoned for airport use. It's in airport zoning. Not that it's for airport use, but it's within the airport zoning. And if the seller fails to do that, the seller is in violation of law. So if any of these people who bought their property did not get that written notification, which is required by Wakulla County Code, and they feel that they have some kind of legal claim, their legal claim would be against the seller who sold without giving them the required written notification.
Is that the same notification on a hood?
Excuse me?
When you fill out a HUD disclosure, one of the
No.
questions is, are you in an airport?
No, it's not. Actually, let me read you, it's section 77-4 of the Wakulla County Code, and it says, "No person shall sell, lease, or offer to sell or lease any land within the airport noise zone, 100 CNR 85 dBA contour, unless the prospective buyer or lessee has been given the following notice in writing." And this is what the notice they have to give says. Noise warning. This land lies beneath the aircraft approach and departure routes for Wakulla County Airport, and it is subject to noise that may be objectionable. So the 5 homes in question are all within this airport zone that required notification. And if anybody sold them that property without warning them that they were in that airport zone, they would have, in my opinion, a legal claim against that person. Now, I've heard them kind of intimating that they thought they had a legal claim against Wakulla County, and I don't think that's the case, because I think you're very well insulated not only by that ordinance, but by case law in general that regulates inverse condemnation. In Florida, there is only one reported case of anyone having sued for inverse condemnation because of an airport in a county where they had a similar ordinance. I'll cover cases where they didn't have an ordinance in a minute. But in situations where they had a similar ordinance as Wakulla County, there has never been a successful inverse condemnation case in any of the reported literature. So what I'm telling you is that based on the ordinance you have that requires those written warnings, there has never been a case that was successful against a county under those fact circumstances. Now, there have been some successful inverse condemnation claims in Florida based on aviation noise factors in counties where they didn't have that sort of protective ordinance. But I would say that the vast majority of those have also been unsuccessful, because in order to succeed, you have to prove not that it's a nuisance or that there's noise. You have to prove an almost complete destruction of value in the property. You have to show something like you've been ousted from the property, that it's no longer habitable, that you have almost no marketable property value left. And that is such a high standard to meet that the majority of the aviation inverse condemnation cases have failed. Even in cases where they could show some devaluation, they couldn't show reach that threshold of almost zero value. And so I would think that the legal issues and the threats are really de minimis, and I don't think they're anything to be taken particularly seriously. I've talked with your own county attorney, Ms. Encinosa, and she agrees with me that there's very little chance of an inverse condemnation claim being successful against the county. Now, one other thing I would like to mention, and I'll try to be very quick because I know I'm on borrowed time here, but as I started to say in my first presentation, I've been doing environmental law for 34 years, and I have handled a large number of not only inverse condemnation cases myself, but also water pollution cases has been the majority of my work. And when I found out how they're handling fuel at that airport now, I was truly appalled. They're bringing in fuel trucks, and when people are taking little hand containers and they're going over and putting the gasoline in, to me, that is like 1950s technology. I mean, maybe not even that advanced. That is an accident waiting to happen. That is a fire hazard. That even just a liter of gasoline spilled on the ground can contaminate wells all over the place, in a 1 mile radius even, because you have such porous soil down here, and the sandy soil just acts like a tea bag. So when I heard about that, I thought, my goodness, not only is that a hazard to the neighbors and the bay, but it's it's a situation that really needs to be remedied before something really bad happens out there. And as the engineer talked, the modern technology now has so many built-in fail-safe mechanisms. You could even set up piezometers around the perimeter of the airport so that if any pollution got out, they would know immediately and they could start reverse osmosis to clean it. So I think you'd be a lot safer with the modern technology and having a regulated fuel farm that's regulated by the state of Florida than what you've got out there now, which is, to me, absolutely unacceptable. And if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to take them. Oh, one other thing I'd like to mention. I heard a number of people in the opposition say, we're okay with the airport as it is now, but we just don't want any improvements made to it. And I'm sure they're very sincere in saying that, but legally speaking, I've taken a look at the reverter clause in the airport the papers that have been executed, and if the county does not want to go along with the improvements at the airport would be finished, because FDOT is not going to let a homeowners association run a county airport. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
Any questions?
Okay. Thank you very much.
We'd also like to ask Janice Watson to please come back up. I have not had everyone else got to review the paperwork.
How many flights do you have in your airport?
We average about 30 operations a day, depending on the weather. Everything is weather contingent.
Operations being a landing and a takeoff.
Landing and a takeoff.
So that's 15 coming in. Well,
it just depends. It's so hard to tell. We operate there's a skydiving school there, so on the weekends that plane is just, he's going off.
Do you have military flights come in and refuel? Because I know my buddy that trained at Chinook and Rucker, he would fly down and fuel his helicopter up and then eat and then fly back to Rucker.
Well, we have people coming to us for fuel because we like to be the Walmart fuel source. We make sure we are the cheapest within a 100-mile radius, and we're making money like that. Appalachia adds $1. I talked to.
How long is your runway?
Our runway is 2,700 feet, which limits us to a Category 1 aircraft. We will never have a jet. We don't sell jet fuel. We're landlocked. We're in a residential area. We are on a ridge that's surrounded by a wetland, last stormwater pond. We had to put in for our T-hanger project. We had to move it 3 times because every time they come out, they get a wetland seep. So you maneuver around it. But the folks at DOT are wonderful.
You have the horse racing facility in Quincy?
It's in Gretna.
Gretna. They fly into Quincy then?
I don't know. I haven't seen anybody yet.
Okay.
So we don't have a courtesy car.
It doesn't look like you. Where is your salary in here? Administrative?
They pay me $20,000 a year. We pay someone to cut the grass. We pay Mr. Earl, who is Mr. Fix-It. He can fix it. If it's broke, he can fix it. He's an 85-year-old retired pilot. I hope he never dies. And we have a little girl that comes and cleans the terminal. Everybody is a subcontract employee. We all get a 1099 at the end of the year. We are a special district. We are not part of the city of Quincy or not part of Gadsden County. The geographic boundary of the airport is inside the city. The city and the county, all they want to know is that we don't want any money from them.
What's the acreage of your total facility?
About 200 acres, but
So
probably 150 of it is swamp.
So about 50 acres of up.
50 acres, but we know about 50, so.
What is your primarily the people who fly in? Is it industry? Is it business, or what's?
I'd probably say 25% of my tenants own their aircraft for business, but most of the people are recreational flyers. The people that come in and out are recreational flyers. They come in, they buy gas. Somebody will take them to town and get something to eat.
Basically like a marina. If it's cheaper for me to keep my boat at, which I don't have a boat, but if I had a boat and I wanted to keep it at a marina, I'd find a marina maybe with the cheapest fuel, even if I had to drive a little further to get to it.
I have 2 tenants that live in Crawfordville, and they drive to Quincy. They have their airplanes in Quincy, so. Tallahassee is very unfriendly to general aviation. They've done everything they can to push them away. And Quincy has said, come on down. Come on. We want you. And, and that's our approach. But like I say, I'm not saying here or there, but it's a general aviation recreational airport that is in the black. We generate probably $25,000, $30,000 excess revenue over expenses, and that our only 2 revenue sources are from fuel sales and hangar rentals. And the money that we get, we do take FAA funds. The difference in FAA funds from DOT, FAA gives you 95%. You have to pay a 5% match, and that excess revenue we generate every year we use for the 5% match.
That's your line item, 31,150.
We call it contingency, but that's what...
And project match.
That's what we use it for.
So you pay the match out of your...
Out of the airport revenues, we pay the match. But DOT money, because Gadsden, like Wakulla, is part of that rural area of critical economic concern, you're eligible for the 100% match. And the DOT aviation funds are just different than regular road funds.
Also, Janice, it looks like you got $1.7 million in grants here for, at least one of them is extra hangars. I assume you anticipate you're going to generate more revenue than from hangar rental.
We hope so. Yeah, and it costs, we're going to add 12 new hangars. They should be finished by December. And it's zero additional overhead to collect another $25,000 a year in revenue. So it's not going to change. We'll sell more fuel, things like that. But like I say,
Because it doesn't go up because the insurance costs that you're paying.
The insurance, the property insurance may go up, but we pay all of we have property insurance, we have liability insurance, we have insurance on me as a administrative employee, we have insurance on our fuel. We have a double wall 10,000 gallon tank. It's completely self-serve. The airport is self-serve. There's not someone there all the time.
Where do the people live who rent your hangars?
I would say 50% of them live in Tallahassee.
Okay.
I've got two from Crawfordville. There's some in Havana and Quincy and stuff. So.
Any additional questions?
I don't think it should not.
Okay, no worries. Well, we'll come back and we might have the chance to talk about it later, but not right now. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate
anything it. Anything I can answer as far as my association, my experience with DOT, I would be more than happy to help. Okay.
Mike Morgan, it's been requested that you come back up to the podium.
Mike, you said that if we had this airport, whatever, that you would do your paint and body shop down at Tarpon.
Well, the last few years have been pretty tough to work on cars, but I've painted planes and from down there for.
Why didn't you come to us at some point in time and say, I need a hangar. If you'll provide me with a hangar, I'll move my business down there.
I would have never paid for that.
Why haven't I come to the county commission and asked them that?
Yeah.
I haven't. I'm too busy running a shop right now for the last.
I understand,
years,
but
yeah.
In the way I feel is that if I've got a business that wants to open a business, I'll do whatever I can to help him go into business. So maybe we could have helped you to.
Well, you still can. You don't have to stop now. All you got to do is not get rid of the airport. If it's not me, it may be the fellow working in Carabel right now. I know for a fact he's down there because there's too many, there's not enough infrastructure there in Wakulla.
Okay.
Well, isn't this why we have an IDA?
It's one of the things that are covered by the IDA. Yeah.
I've used the airport like it is for the last 20 years and loved it. Improvements or expansions would be great, if we can make everybody happy doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Are there any other people that we'd like to have called up to speak before we talk amongst ourselves? Here, we'll give you 1 minute, but no one should have turned your card in already. But
I think I speak for the youth of Wakulla County, Leon County, anywhere when I say that we don't need this airport. I think most of the tourism you comes from people coming down from Leon County, coming down from other surrounding counties, trying to fish, trying to have fun like that, not coming in from planes.
Thank you. And make sure I need your card. Do you all have anybody on the commission that you would like to have called back up? Are we good? Commissioner Arts, you good?
Are those all questions, Miss?
These are just diligent notes.
I'm just taking notes.
4 pages there.
I'm on 6.
That's why I was asking to make sure there was nobody needing clarification up for you particular. All right.
I do have a question for our county attorney.
All right. County attorney in Senosa, are you at a mic?
I'm just, I just learned that one of our I just learned here that one of our commissioners has a lot in Tarpot. So when this comes to a vote, are there only going to be 4 of us voting? Does one need to recuse himself, or only?
Peter Moore and I will discuss that afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. Could I speak?
Do you own a plane?
Could I speak to that? I used to dream about owning a plane. Yes, I have a lot in Tarpine, but in my vote, it will be a vote of no financial interest.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you'll talk to our attorney.
Okay. Okay. David, do you have anything you would like to add to the conversation, or would you like us to talk amongst ourselves?
Y'all go right ahead, and I'll interject as need be. Nothing.
Are there comments from the board?
I have some, but I'll be back. Go ahead.
Alan, if I may, I'll
Yes,
start.
please. Yes, sir.
To me, the major issue is that we haven't, I mean, we have this airport that's been here since 77 and 63. Well, there's all kind of been years been passed out today, but a number of years. And I don't want to see the airport go away. What I'd like, and I think there's some common ground in here, and, you know, I heard people threaten with votes and all that, and, you know, I don't sit up here to cast a vote any way I ever cast a vote, it's not to win votes. I'm just trying to do what's best for Wakulla County. The airport is something that I think is of value to many, and most of us, it's just, when we drive by, it's a strip of land, we're not sure why it's out there. But the bottom line is that as long as the rest of the county citizens don't have to pay for that airport, then I'm fine with keeping the airport. Now, here's where I'm at with the whole thing. After talking to the FDOT guy, the basic question I asked, and excuse me, I said, what will it take, sir, just to make this airport, and the quandary we're in is that it's not certified, and it won't be certified here in about 6 weeks, I think that's what you said, Mr. Fultz. So we got to do something. You know, we got to get off the fence post here and do something. So I'm of the opinion that we should carefully move forward with looking at and I'm use this word literally here, carefully move forward, David, with the funding. I want to know how it's going to tie us down. You know, what is the long-term ramifications of accepting that funding? And I'm of the opinion that we should just do the minimum to move it. I understand 35 feet is what we need. Move it 35 feet, and I'm not sure what direction it is. To me, that's to the north, but I think it's actually to the west. To the west. Move it that 35 feet. Do the environmental studies it takes to mitigate whatever stormwater needs to be mitigated and taken care of, and leave it a grass field. And that way we still have a usable airport that the same people can use. That it'll always be used like it's been used in the past, and we still have an airport that people can use, and it's not going to encroach in the folks that are concerned about it encroaching into their front yards or whatever. I've looked at this hard, guys, and I'm with you, and I've heard many of you say that you don't have a problem with the airport like it is, but what you have a problem with is if that, and I forget what they call that extension of the runway, the vector, or this sideways thing that exists. I don't need to understand all that. I just need to understand the dollars and cents. But at the end of the day, if we just expand it, not expand it, that's the wrong word. If we just move it that 35 feet, because the old Hammond encroaches into it, and there's a hangar and there's some homes that encroach in it, and it's never going to be certified by FDOT until we move it that 35 feet. Just go, you know, if the state will give us the money with no strings attached, and that's where I'm at. And that's the only way I'm going to cast my vote for it, as long as there's no strings attached. And move it the number of feet it needs to be moved, center up the runway. It doesn't extend to the north or south anymore to encroach on people's property, which I understand it won't. That's what the FDOT man promised me. He sat down with a drawing. We talked all that through thoroughly, and he said it could be done, and he said we would certify you. That's my only concerns, and I think that's a middle-of-the-road compromise for the whole community, as long as Wakulla County is not going to end up spending county funds to maintain that airport for the long haul. That's the only thing I'm concerned about, and it sounds like it's possible to do. I mean, we've spent minimal money on it for all these years, and and the FDOT guy said we can, that grant that you will get to buy that property to move it. He said to me, and looked me in the eye and said, "There's no strings attached." Now, I know that's one man speaking for big government, but they
and talking with him, there will be, once we spend the big money, that even to move it, because we've got to actually excavate areas and do a big earth moving project, there will be, at that point in time, there will more than likely be a 20-year operational tie that we'll have to operate there.
As long as they don't come back and say, "All right, Wakulla County, now that you've done this, we're going, you got to pave it."
There's no forcing.
Okay, and that's the way I understood it too.
That's right. That's the way I understood it as well. Yes.
And that, folks, that's where I'm at. So I think that's a fair compromise for maybe, I see some people shaking their head no, and I know some of you just absolutely want the airport gone, and I'm not sure why. But as long as it's not going to encroach on anything different than what you already have, moving it 35 feet to the west is not going to impact any of the homes that are on the south side of Surf Road. And that's what I'm concerned about, because I don't want a single one of your homes to be impacted. And the guy said to me, the FDOT guy says, "Mike," he said, if you do what you're talking about," he said, the runway, the same planes they hear today, they're going to hear tomorrow, with it moved 35 feet. Okay, and that's the whole idea.
And you're right, and that's exactly what he said. The other thing that he said any type of runway would be fine, surface, but they recommended you could do the same thing with a paved runway, and that it actually increased safety, and that was his only thing, is caution about it going back with a grass runway. But that's for you guys.
I value the idea of an airport. Coming from the military, I have taken. There has been pilots who have volunteered to take our ROTC kids and give them a flight down there, and nothing has thrilled them more. And that's a nice thing to have in our county. The fact that we, one day when our economy recovers and maybe we get back to where people can come in here and spend their money, we want their money. And but I don't want to impact. I certainly sense you guys who live there, I don't want that to impact your homes, and I'm not going to do anything that will do that, number one, and I want some sort of guarantee, and I heard that from the FDOT guy, that there would be no strings attached. At any point we can cut the money off, and I know as this board changes, and you change people out, things change, and the next guys who sit up here may have a different perspective on things. I can only tell you how I feel about it. Having lived here my whole life, I care about Wakulla County, and I go back to 1955 living here. So I just want to make you get clear that I understand both sides, if you will, and I want to try to meet in the middle here where we can work together. So that's all I have to say about it.
Mr. Merritt?
I put a lot of thought into this too. And the conclusion I came up to is 95% of the people in this county don't care anything about an airport. They don't care if we have one. They don't think we need one. But if you ask that 95%, do you mind if we have an airport? I think they'd say, no, I don't mind if we have an airport. I just don't want to pay for it.
Right.
So, to me, it's kind of like the community center or well, maybe not community so much, but the equestrian facility. I'll probably never go there because I don't have a horse. Do I mind us having an equestrian facility? No, I don't mind. I think it's an amenity. So I'm in support of moving ahead with it. And if property comes up for sale around in this area and the state will pay for it, I'd say go ahead and buy it if they're willing sellers. I'm not willing to take anybody's property, though. No eminent domain. I'm not willing to take anybody's property. I certainly don't think Mike is. But if there's a property in a safety zone or whatever, and they want to sell it, then
And DOT's willing to pay to buy it.
DOT's willing to pay for it, and we're not paying for it, I don't have a problem with that. So,
How far along do you want to go? Do you want to see it stay as a grass strip? Do you think it should be paved?
I think if we get
Grass.
I'm grass.
I know where you are. I was asking.
if we get whatever's properly needed to make it paved, and if we decide to pave it, then I'm fine with that. If it's a safety upgrade, I don't want to infringe on anybody else. I know you're shaking your head no, but that's all right. I don't want to infringe on anybody else's rights either. And I think we need to dissolve the airport committee. We need to be making decisions because we're the one accountable to the voters out there.
I agree with that.
That would take a lot of relief off people knowing that we're the ones that decide how we're going to proceed. Said the board may change. They may say, let's shut it down before any money's spent on it. But I think we need to be accountable since we're elected. I think the fees at the airport need to be collected better. If they need to be raised, they need to be raised to be revenue neutral or even make a little bit of money off of tarpine.
Right.
You know, mostly it's tarpine that uses the airport. And I'm not under any illusion that improvements are going to be a huge economic impact. They're not. I mean, they may make some, but it's not going to be a boondoggle of cash. So that's my opinion.
One other thing that Dave Roberts did say, and I think each one of y'all remember this, is that today, if you have an airplane flying over your house, or you don't have an airplane flying over your house, if the airport is moved to 35 feet, nothing's going to change.
It's going to change. And that was
It's still the same. The 35 feet doesn't make a hill of beans in the movement of it.
Theoretically, those two airplanes Mr. Parham counted over Memorial Day weekend, even after the improvements, he'd still only count two airplanes.
Well,
in theory.
Because most people land. If we could force people to only land from the refuge side, I would do that in 2 seconds. And I asked the DOT man, why don't we just make everybody come this way?
If the wind cooperated, that wouldn't be a problem.
Yes. And I think the wind cooperates most of the time.
It does.
Good thing you don't have an airplane.
I don't know if there's a way. That's true. And by the way, I built Dr. Griggs' house, who moved from Tennessee. He flew down to the airport, and he said he would have kept his plane there if they had to have hangars and whatever, but he ended up taking it somewhere else. So I actually know somebody personally that doesn't live in Tarpon.
I think I find myself agreeing with Randy. I think that one of the questions I was asking, not just because DOT, I'm very disappointed DOT can't be here. I'm hoping that DOT gets the opportunity to review our tape, because everything has been said, it's been videotaped, will be on YouTube in the next few days. But I'm also
said he would.
DOT had the chance to review all of this and maybe give us any insight they have. I'd love a nice memo. I think it's the first time I asked for a nice memo, but I really would like a nice memo of their thoughts on the meeting. I find myself agreeing with Randy. I think that my understanding of how this is working right now, after having met with them, pretty much. The question someone asked about we're number 99 out of 102, how are we going to get these improvements? DOT has said the safety improvements we rank very high on because we need them. So the expansion to get that 35 feet strip, I think the paving fell under that. There are several things that make the airport safer that we rank very high on. Economic development, things like the fuel farm and factories, not factories, but like a paint and body shop, which they would help build for us, we don't rank high on because we're such a low ranking right now. But we have to, but the safety improvements we rank very high on because they want to make our airports safer. So we will probably actually see some of these things implemented in the near future. And then the question becomes, and I guess as David walked out of the room, it's for me, and it comes back to what Randy was saying, if we were going to be obligated for 20 years and the insurance is going to be the same, we're in for a penny, then we're in for a pound. We need to, if we can pave it, and that makes it safer, and the money's there, we have no match, I lean in that direction. Trying to make it a safe airport. So.
Better speak fast, Jerry. I think there's a bad thunderstorm coming.
That's what I
real bad.
I just talked to the attorney, and she says I can probably not vote. I can probably vote, depending on whether I'm going to have a gain or a loss. It's how do you do that? I do have an opinion, though. From the day I took, I was fortunate enough to be elected. I didn't think that. I thought that was a private airport, and it should pretty much. The county had no business paying for a private airport. About the money that we may or may not get from the government, I guess you could say I'm government, but I don't trust the government. I don't trust them from one day to the next to be stable in their decisions. There's so many things that I believed in a long time ago that today it just changes. You invest money in college education, and then they change that if you make so much money you can't participate in that. Your Social Security will soon be that such point in time, if your income is above a certain number, you can't participate in that. So government comes and goes, and it changes according to whoever's in office. First of all, whatever decision we make, that's still going to be an airport. People are going to still fly in and out. It doesn't matter where it's a county airport, private airport.
I do. There is my understanding, and I guess this is one of the things the DOT. My understanding is there's good odds it could close if we don't maintain it. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know if that was well published here.
The local residents can take a risk. I mean, they run their own risk of landing wherever they want to, but it won't be a certified airport.
You know, it bothered me that this attorney told us we had a great risk right now because of fuel spills. If there's a fuel spill out there, we own the airport. We got to dig out 30 acres of dirt. So the FAA will come in and say you got to have a whatever. You got to have a fire truck out here also. I'm going to make a prediction. It doesn't matter whether it's however we vote. It's still going to be an airport. Same number of people will come and go, regardless. So none of that doesn't change. I don't think anybody will refuse to land there. If there's anybody here who would like to invest in an airport, we have one. Anybody in the audience who would like to invest in this airport? It's an excellent opportunity for somebody right now, according to what I hear, that we're gonna make money in this thing. I just don't believe that. As an investor myself, I would never invest in this airport. Representing the people of this county, they have asked me not to support this airport, and that's who I represent. I represent the people. I understand that the people in Tarpine, of which I'm a property owner in Tarpine, it's an asset to those folks, and it's probably an asset to the county. I think a lot of people fly in, private pilots come and go, but the people that call me, they want to make sure that I don't invest any of their money in this airport, and that's going to be my decision. I will not invest any of their money in this airport. If it can stay as a grass strip and stay as it is, I think it's a great place to be, and I think it's an asset to the county. But I am not going to invest any of the county's money in this airport myself.
Commissioner Archie, before you speak, I meant to mention earlier, I've also, as I've talked about, my reply was fairly standard. I've at this point received over 50 emails, a large chunk of them from people who say they fly in to our airport from out of town. I was surprised by the number of emails we got to that. Emails on both sides of people saying with strong views, but I was surprised by the number of people who talked about visiting us just through our airport. Commissioner Arts?
Yeah. Well, I'm disappointed the gentleman from FDOT wasn't here because I think he would have helped to address some misconceptions and provided some information that would have been helpful. I'm kind of leaning where you guys are. I think Alan did a good job of describing, but I think there's some minimal things that need to be done to the airport to address the hangars that are intruding and to meet the width requirements, and that it's probably worth doing those things given that it can be done with 100% of external funding. It'll improve the safety of the airport and keep the airport, which in general, I mean, there's trade-offs, but I do tend to see it as an asset. And I don't think the county is a lot better off losing it. I have some real concerns, though, about, and I don't know how we address this. I kind of like what Randy said about having us assume oversight for it. I actually liked when we had Doug Jones appointed as the staff person in charge of it, because it seems to me we have a whole string of errors and missed opportunities and problems associated with this facility. And I'm not sure how we're going to stop that. I mean, one thing that Dave Roberts pointed out, which is really a shame, I think, is that at one point this property that is desired for acquisition was the FDIC and could have been obtained for very little money. And it seems like somebody from the county should have been paying attention to that, as opposed to letting it then be purchased so that it's going to take even more funds to acquire now. Anyway, there are a number of things like that, and I would like to see some recommendations from county administration about how we're going to better kind of oversee this. I would also be interested in seeing, even though right now I would support just the minimum for safety and to satisfy the licensing requirements, I would like to see a well thought out plan for what could be done to further increase the value, the revenue, the use of the airport. Real numbers, not pie in the sky, but if what's working in Quincy could be developed here, I mean, it's worth putting some effort into, I think. I also want to see the homeowners, everything done to make sure that those properties are preserved, that noise isn't an issue. I'm horrified by what happened with the, on private property and the sign and whatever, and wetlands violations. None of that was county, and I know that was a lot of what got people upset. So I mean, I'm all for trying to have vegetative buffers and insulation and, and involving the community much more in this whole process and planning as we move forward, because I think you're right, the community, you all have a stake in it too. So anyway, those are just my thoughts at this point.
So, are there other comments before we... so we have 6 weeks, and there's a deadline? Is there anything we need to do?
We've got a plan of action.
Okay. I also heard the discussion, it sounds like that we're talking about, out of the summation of this, I think we're going to be doing away with the airport committee.
Right.
Okay.
We can have an airport advisory committee, I think.
Yeah, I think we need an airport advisory committee.
Anyone in charge of anyone in charge of implementing a plan or spending any money that's not us.
I agree.
Right.
They can recommend stuff like a landscape committee or whatever, but not, the buck needs to stop with us as far as how it proceeds and so forth.
You need to make sure also that whatever committee it is, that it doesn't tie up our staff. That our staff doesn't start.
And if
Frank Evans used to be the airport director years ago, who was the assistant planning director. I think he was airport director for years, wasn't he?
Let me come back with a strategy for you guys.
And if we do have another committee, we'll have the chance to appoint new people, and we'll make sure that...
Alan, David, if you can, I know we're on a short rope here, but like I said, for the plan of action, I want to make sure it's clear about the strings attached to the money. Right. We just do the 35 feet, and again, I'm going to say it publicly, that's all I'm for, is moving it to the west 35 feet and keeping it in a grass strip, no further encroachment to the north or south. So that's where I'm at.
And with the different levels of commitment, I think Commissioner Stewart raised some very good questions.
Yeah.
If the people to the north want to sell their property, fine, but I'm not going to I mean,
We're not going to eminent domain.
no eminent domain.
Well, and
at
I
all.
think the way DOT explained it, they'll make offers, and you can either accept the offer, put it in your back pocket, and hold it. It's not a forcible sale.
Okay.
At all.
And we end up with an airport that's just 35 feet. I mean, think about what 35 feet is. That's from here out there to where it's pouring rain right now, to the north. It's just like it is now, only it's licensed. And we can, we have an adequate airport. So
The trees,
that's a fair compromise, I think.
y'all can deal with that, right?
Yeah, we're dealing with that. We've got a
plan.
plan of action for that. We're going to take care of that. And we believe we've got grant money. Some of the $75,000 that DOT was going to align for lighting, they said they'll allow us to use some of that, which will be a very small amount to cut the trees.
And we're going to have DOT review the tape. Did I say that? I just said the trees that are in the way of that approach.
You cut trees, I did not.
I'm not cutting any trees. I'm not cutting.
We'll go ahead and do it.
No, they've identified, it's primarily on the north side of out in the St. Mark's Refuge is the majority of them.
But the minority.
I don't think this
But it's not anything on the south side of Surf Road, period.
Let's get clear.
Please, please,
I'm sorry.
please calm down. Please calm down.
And I want clarification from the FDOT about, because I was left with
They've identified where they are, and we're getting the survey of those trees, and we're gonna be
You'll get
presenting
to
that
see it, so I'll make sure that you get to
There's
see it.
nothing on the south side of Surf Road. Promise.
You gave their attorney, they brought an attorney, you gave that attorney an opportunity to speak to some issues relative to zoning.
Jim,
Not give us a chance.
what we did was we allowed the county commission to ask for people they wanted to come back and speak, and we let those people speak. I asked, did anybody else want anybody else to speak? They did not ask for anyone else to come back up. It wasn't, my job is to stay neutral as much as possible so it comes to voting.
Can I speak to a position?
Workshop, I think.
I think the workshop, I'm sorry, we're wrapping up the workshop. There will still be...
The only thing I wanted to do was to let you know what the position of Oclockonee Bay is in terms of, I've heard a lot of things about it. I was going to let you just know what the real position of this group over here is. We're not for moving any airport. If our position was very simply that
Sir,
we didn't like
I think we
the middle of...
understand your position, sir. I think the workshop's over.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, everybody who came. David, make sure we get a memo from the people.